this choice, love the gain, love the way the audio sounds in here. But I've been sick recently, so I haven't filmed in a while actually. I've had this cough, I've been congested, it was a bad cold. I'm good now, but if you notice anything different in my voice or my breathing patterns, that would probably be why. And three, because I haven't been able to film lately, I'm a little behind, and so I am filming this video during the day. So those are the things to know, to consider, to take into account, and without further ado, we will get started. The first thing I want to mention to you today, in terms of what I've been watching lately, TV and all that, is a show that I think, from what I know, is a bit of a sleeper, but is really good, and that surprised me. And that is this show called, don't put too much on the title, okay? Called Drops of God. Drops of God. So, if you already know something about this show, then you might know that it is based on a manga called Drops of God. So, a manga with the same title, hence the kind of theatricality or the drama of the title. If you're into that sentimentality, great. And if you're not, I would say don't let it turn you off. This is a show. It's like a drama about a woman and a man. She is French, he is Japanese, and they are competing for the inheritance of this wine guy, this world famous sommelier, wine critic, vintner, like he saw the things. He passes away and he has this crazy estate full of all these rare wines, this guidebook that he was in charge of, lots of money and other things, and he basically sets up a competition between two people to compete for his inheritance through a series of challenges. There are 3 challenges. The woman is his daughter, his estranged daughter, and the man, the Japanese man, is his student. And I just thought this show was so fun to watch. It's just a really well-structured story, I think. Like I said, the competition for the inheritance has 3 challenges. Each one gets progressively harder or reveals a different side of the knowledge that they should have in order to lay claim to his inheritance. And it's like a little bit like a scavenger hunt, goose chase across the world. They're like deep in wine cellars, like trying to find the answers to these sort of riddle-like challenges or questions that are put to them. It's also really interesting from a cultural standpoint. Sometimes it leans a little on stereotypes, but it's also aware of that and calls attention to that at a few points. But there's a lot of French culture in it, there's a lot of Japanese culture in it, and Italian culture as well. And then it's also worth watching for the different relationships such and such a thing. It's like a lot of mysteries that are unraveling over the course of the show. And so it's just a really satisfying watch. I have not read the manga, but I also feel like if you know anything about manga, I don't read a lot of manga or any manga. I'm not really huge into anime, but I know enough about it to know like the general visual style. And when you're watching this show, I think sometimes you catch a frame and you're like, I'd be surprised if that wasn't a direct recomposition of the manga frame. So it has, because of that, this show has this interesting visual style. It's not in your face at all. So if you're not into that, don't be worried or turned off, like I said. But if you know a little bit, if you have like an eye for manga at all, I think it's also fun to watch and be like, that seems really informed by manga. The way like a nosebleed looks, or the way someone looks in from another room, like kind of sinisterly, like it looks like manga. So the show draws a lot from the manga and a lot from manga as a medium, and that's a really cool aspect of it as well. Finally, you accidentally end up learning quite a good deal about wine, about how to pick apart the flavors, or how someone might do that, about the proper way to smell it, about like why this one is rare, why that one isn't. Not really information that like if you really wanted that information, or to like seriously study wine, you would go about it in a different way, but kind of as like tangential filler type threads in the story. It's really interesting. I like shows where you dive deep into some other culture or world of sorts. In this case, there's different country cultures, but then also different, like the culture of wine. And actually, one more thing I want to say is that it does a beautiful job rendering the experience of taste and smell that you would need to recognize wine in a visual way. There's this kind of depiction of her sense memory as a library, or like a cellar with many drawers. That's really great. There's another depiction of like overwhelming scents and smells as bursts of color. Also really great. So just across the board, really well done. The end is really satisfying as well. I wanted like a little more from the last episode, just a hair, but it's really satisfying, and the story structure as a whole is incredibly satisfying. So that is my first recommendation. My second recommendation is couples therapy. Capital C, capital T, couples therapy. This show is, what do you call it? Nonfiction. It's documentary style, and that is the beauty of it. Basically, the showrunner or director, producer had two parents who were therapists and saw all of the good it could do in people's lives, the therapeutic process, all the good it could do, and he wanted to make a show documenting the therapy for people. Elsa season. And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's so amazing to see the trajectories that people go through. They all have a different journey, some more successful than others. It's fascinating to hear about other people's problems, which are sometimes very relatable, sometimes very heartbreaking, sometimes very surprising. And like I said, the therapist, Orna, her name is Orna, O-R-N-A, is fantastic. I could actually talk about this show for ages, like hours and hours, and so that's all I'm gonna say about it for now. If you want to hear more about the show or hear more about my thoughts on the show, if you've already watched it, this month I'm gonna post 2 videos on my Patreon, just kind of going through the show and everything I thought about it and what stood out to me, kind of like a dishy gossip sesh, but about these people who are on this show going through therapy. Just who I found relatable, who I found hard to watch, and things like that. If you're interested in that, that will be on my Patreon. Either way, if you haven't seen the show, like, I can't recommend it highly enough. I was blown away by it. I'm very glad it exists. And it's just really thoughtfully done, and just really thought-provoking. I still think about the people on the show. So, then another show we've been watching may not surprise you, but I'll mention it here anyway, and that would be Shogun. Obviously, Shogun. It's really good. I'm going to be honest and say that when we watched the first episode, I was not that impressed. I thought it was too centered on, like, this white guy's point of view in a way that just really didn't interest me. It still doesn't interest me that much, but I can understand what it does for the story. But I just don't find that interesting. So I was looking to the rest of the show to kind of pull me in, and it did. So one issue I had was, like, it just seemed very much like a show in the beginning, especially the first episode, a show centered around this white guy, a fish out of water in Japan, during the, I don't want to be historically inaccurate, but long ago. And I did not like that because there were things that just seemed from that point of view that it's also based on a book written by this white guy, and I just felt like you could tell, not because it was inaccurate, but just because, like, the lens was, like, from the outside looking in a way that I didn't think added much to it at all. I would have much preferred a similar story that was without this protagonist, and just about the different competing factions of Japan at that time, and the different regions and all of that, and not this little sailor pirate barbarian dude. I don't find him interesting. I don't think he's a good actor. The things that I don't believe about the show come from him too. Like, I'm not gonna spoil it, but there are 2 relationships, not like even necessarily romantic, but 2 relationships in the show that he has with a person who's like his superior and that he has with someone that is romantic, and I don't buy the dynamics of either of those relationships, and I think it's due to this guy's acting, but that's neither here nor there. It's just okay. Like, passes, but barely. So anyway, in the first episode I didn't like that much. But I got over it a little bit because the other characters are really well developed and very dynamic and rich. Like, I think because I'm sick, I can't remember anyone's name right now, but the translator, that's such a simplified way to refer to her, but the translator is such a fascinating character. The woman who loses her family and becomes the barbarian pirate guy's consort is a fascinating woman. The woman who owns the house, which is essentially a brothel but classier, is fascinating. I don't like him per se, but Dornaga's son, really fascinating character. He's not as multidimensional as the others, but he's still really interesting. Well, the Dornaga, obviously. Dornaga is rad. He's radical. So he's fun to watch. Yeah, so it's because the other characters are really dynamic that I was able to get past this weird point of view issue that I had. And of course, I understand that it's this fish out of water foreigner element that is the catalyst for a lot of what's happening to happen. I still think the story could be told without him, and perhaps it would be quite different, especially based on the way I feel that the finale might be taking us, although who knows. So I get why he's there, but I just am not really that into it. Anyway, the show is very good, and the other thing, because I said there were two things that I struggled with in the first episode, is the second thing in the first episode was the gratuitous violence. There's one moment where I covered my eyes, and we've been okay since then. We've been okay. There's certainly other violent moments in the show, but not nearly as cruel or as dwelt upon or as like constant. There was a sound element with this one that I was just like, it wasn't even that bad, but it was just like in the background. So finally, we also watched the completely true, I don't know the full title, The Completely True Adventures of Dick Turpin, I think it's called. Dick Turpin. We watched Great British Bake Off. We love Niall. We saw that he was on it, and so we started watching it. I had pretty low expectations for it, to be honest. I thought it was just kind of like, oh, let's throw this familiar face up there and like, I don't know, whatever. But it's very silly, it's very fun. A lot of the comedy plays on anachronisms, kind of. It's this, I don't know if you'd say like maybe medieval times or so. 17th, I have no idea. It takes place in the past. It's a comedy. Every episode is like 30 minutes. And basically, there's this guy who is a bandit and has friends who help him, but he's very silly and gets up to all kinds of trouble, essentially, and is really good-hearted and silly and not really cut out must drink before they're like doomed, basically. And they basically make it out to be like the wagon is a coach bus, like for one last rest stop kind of thing. So it's just like strange, silly humor, really anachronistic. It's fun. If you don't watch it, I don't think you're missing anything, but it is really fun, and we've been looking for just an easy 30-minute comedy to watch when we're tired and just trying to get the dog to settle down. It is similar to Our Flag Means Death in terms of humor. It's like quite silly. Our Flag Means Death is a Taika show from maybe last year, and similarly really silly, really kooky show about pirates at sea. So there's another rec for you if you have not seen it already.